this case about whether you think the birth was real, whether you think there was a surrogate, whether you think Meghan was wearing a moon bump. The fact is, Harry and Meghan lied. Buckingham Palace lied on their behalf. There was a complete cover-up over the birth of Prince.
She never intended to go to the Portland hospital. She intended to have the baby at home. We know that they deceived the public about the birth data and time of the whole event. So, and also, you know, even it goes down to the lawyer saying that in that statement, when they had that long attack on the Mail, which is astonishing, that Meghan, we know she lied in her statement.
Harry and Meghan Markle's surrogacy scandal has entered the mainstream media domain.
Whole description she does of the Portland hospital, the birth, that was completely fabricated. We all know.
The carefully controlled story around Prince Harry and Meghan Markle is cracking, and people are finally saying it out loud. What was once whispered behind closed doors is now front and center, and the pressure is building by the day. Claims connected to Tom Bower have thrown serious questions into the mix around Archie and Lilibet, and the reaction has been anything but quiet. This has gone way past typical royal drama. Conversations that used to live in small, private corners are now exploding across every platform, and people are demanding real answers to things that once felt completely untouchable. Some are calling for full transparency, and that alone tells you how deep this has gone. The couple who fought so hard to shield their family from public life are now watching that same family become the center of one of the most intense discussions in royal history. And that's exactly where things get deeply uncomfortable. The question being asked, sometimes in a whisper, sometimes straight out loud, is impossible to ignore. Who exactly are Archie and Lilibet?
Herself or Harry hadn't been involved, then they can't be in the royal line. They have to have royal blood, those little ones. Without that, there's no chance of them coming in a member of the royal.
Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, is marking her daughter Lilibet's 4th birthday by sharing some personal photographs. A rare sighting of a little girl seen in this picture with her father, Prince Harry, and now her mom. The child's face is partially covered, as the royal couple is known to fiercely guard the privacy of their 2 children. On Instagram, Meghan wrote, "Happy birthday to our beautiful girl. 4 years ago today, she came into our lives, and the day is brighter and better because of
Something like that. So she wasn't even pregnant. So it's very weird. And Harry, it was said to Harry, not to her. I mean, she just came.
For any normal family, even raising that question would feel out of line. But nothing about this situation is being treated as normal. Everything around Harry and Meghan has always felt carefully packaged, almost too polished. That's exactly why these doubts are hitting differently this time. Based on commentary tied to Tom Bower, the topic of surrogacy has entered the conversation not as a small private detail, but as something that may have been deliberately kept from public view. None of it is confirmed, but the speculation alone is rattling cages, especially when royal bloodlines and lineage carry the kind of weight they always have. If even part of this turns out to hold any truth, the fallout wouldn't stay personal for long. The ripple effects could reach further than anyone expected. Prince Harry is now under a microscope, and the shift in how the public sees him is impossible to miss. The guy who once came across as the laid-back, down-to-earth royal, that image has taken a serious hit. Online, the picture being painted is of someone reacting to headlines, feeling the heat and struggling to keep up with the noise closing in around him. Whether that's the full truth or not, that's the story spreading, and it's picking up speed fast. Meghan, on the other hand, is being talked about very differently. The tone around her reads as calculated and composed, laser-focused on legal moves, firm responses, and shutting down claims before they grow legs. But here's what keeps people locked in. The harder the pushback, the louder the conversation gets. Every attempt to cool things down seems to pull even more eyes directly onto them. Then people start digging into the past, and that's when things get really intense. Old appearances,
Is using everything for publicity and not really truly there. We know how she treats her family.
What we're really now seeing is that both of them, having posed as the victim for so long, are really the aggressors. I discovered was, of course, that she was hunting for a man in England from 2013 onwards, when her marriage had crashed and she couldn't find anyone in Canada at the time. And she wanted wealth and she wanted fame. And she targeted, there's no doubt she targeted.
Timelines and public announcements are being picked apart with fresh eyes. Some are pointing out how certain reveals felt overly staged, how details didn't quite connect, and how key moments were kept unusually private compared to standard royal tradition. Alone, these things might seem minor, but stacked together, they start building a picture that raises more questions than it answers. Critics are now saying this didn't explode overnight. There was time to get ahead of it, to offer clarity before it snowballed. Instead, the silence and the missing answers are what's keeping everything stirred up. The once airtight narrative is now showing real cracks, with more people watching than ever before. No matter where someone stands on the claims tied to Tom Bower, one thing keeps getting louder and harder to dismiss. The silence coming from Harry and Meghan isn't making any of this go away. That silence isn't calming anything down. If anything, it's making everything feel more unresolved and suspicious by the day.
Tom, do you think Harry and Meghan are fast learning what they signed away when they took this Netflix big moolah? And I would say they signed away their credibility and their dignity.
Well, that's our view, but it's not theirs. They need the money, and they need it now more than ever because they've got no other source of income. So I think they're just stuck with the devil now. They're tied to Netflix, they're tied to their book, and all the criticism they're going to take means nothing because that's the only way they can earn their money. It has always been her motive. She's money obsessed and always has been. And that is why she married Prince Harry. A great surprise and disappointment was to discover that Prince Harry had very little money. She imagined he'd be worth hundreds of millions, if not billions. And she's having to make up for it now.
Another detail people keep coming back to is the very noticeable gap between Archie and Lilibet and the rest of the royal family. Look at Prince William and Catherine. Their children are regularly seen with King Charles III, Queen Camilla, and there were even documented moments shared with Queen Elizabeth II before her passing. Those interactions are well recorded, visible, and very much part of the royal public image. But with Harry and Meghan's children, those moments are almost completely absent, and people are starting to ask why. Is it simply a personal choice to stay private, or is there something deeper sitting behind that distance? Nobody has a clear answer, and that uncertainty is exactly what's keeping this conversation alive. The lack of any visible connection to senior royals is striking a lot of people as unusual, especially given how historically public royal family life has always been. The discussion gets even more serious when speculation moves into territory around surrogacy and biological ties. To be clear, none of this is confirmed, and these remain claims and opinions circulating in public spaces. But the reason people are taking it seriously is because of what it could mean inside a royal system where lineage has always carried enormous weight.
Already is talking about marriage, but long before their engagement is even announced, let alone they're married and she's pregnant. And he's sitting in Clarence's house with then Prince Charles and Camilla. And Camilla just laughingly says, well, any child you'll have will probably have brown skin and ginger hair. And they all laugh, including Harry. I mean, it's not because of racism. It's just one of those things everybody imagines. When somebody is pregnant close to you, you wonder what the child will look like. But it was not said as anything other than...
Even unproven uncertainty in that world can trigger massive reactions. If any part of these claims were ever shown to hold truth, the consequences wouldn't stay small. Questions about royal positions, long-standing traditions, and deeply rooted expectations tied to the monarchy would all come rushing to the surface. That's what makes this feel so much bigger than just another headline. And then there's Tom Bower himself. He's not being brushed off as just another voice with an opinion. His track record of digging into complex royal stories is well known, and some point out that claims connected to him in the past have later shown elements of truth. That history is exactly why people are paying very close attention to what's being said now. Not everything being said has been confirmed. What's happening right now is a combination of speculation, public analysis, and reaction feeding into itself. But even without hard confirmation, the impact is already undeniable. This conversation is growing, and it shows zero signs of slowing down. What's pouring even more heat into the situation is the ongoing silence from Harry and Meghan. No direct statements, no clear denials, no visible effort to address the claims head-on. That silence is being read in all kinds of ways, but one thing is certain.
People think her kids are fake. They think they're AI.
Why I think Tina is a great journalist, and perhaps she has inside information. I don't see how the Sussexes can give up both the Netflix and the book deal. They won't be living in a Montecito cottage. They're more likely living somewhere in downtown LA, in a little hovel. That's their problem. They're stuck now. But, the truth is about...
It's keeping this story breathing. People are openly asking why nothing has been done to shut this down completely. Some voices are flat out saying that providing clear proof would end this overnight. But since that hasn't happened, the questions just keep stacking up. Every single day without a response seems to add more attention, not less. What started as smaller online conversations has exploded into full mainstream territory, with people breaking down every detail, every timeline, and every public appearance. The same question keeps circling back. Something doesn't fully add up, and people want answers. From a public image standpoint, this is being described as a serious crisis. The carefully built picture of a fresh start, a happy family, and a clean new chapter is now being challenged, and these aren't small cracks. People are treating them as major fractures that are getting harder to smooth over by the day. For Harry especially, this hits on something deeply personal. Fatherhood has always been framed as the turning point in his story, the thing that gave him purpose, direction, and a reason to walk away from royal life. From the now famous Oprah interview to countless media appearances, that message stayed rock solid. Becoming a dad was presented as everything to him. But now, that very foundation is being questioned, and it's shaking things at the core. Critics are pushing a line of speculation that cuts deep. What if the children he speaks about with such raw emotion are not biologically his? It's important to stress this remains unproven and lives firmly in the space of public opinion and open discussion. But even just asking the question out loud carries massive weight.
Conversation, I'm told and I believe, was very early on in their relationship when Harry is bowled over by Meghan, is desperately in love, and already is talking about marriage. But long before their engagement is even announced, let alone they're married and she's pregnant. And he's sitting in Clarence's house with then Prince Charles and Camilla. And Camilla just laughingly says, well, any child you'll have will probably have brown skin and...
You hoped your children, Archie and Lilibet, would have had that you think they won't be able to now with this decision?
Well, for a start, the only time that I've come back to the UK is sadly for funerals or court cases.
This isn't just a challenge to public image anymore, it's a challenge to identity itself. Prince Harry has long carried the image of resilience. That unforgettable moment, a young boy walking behind Princess Diana's coffin, grief written all over his face, became one of the most defining images of how the world saw him. But the online conversation is shifting, and it's not shifting in his favor. Some portray him as someone being steered and influenced without real control over his own story. Others argue he's fully aware and deeply involved in everything currently being questioned. Both versions are being debated hard right now, and neither one is a good look. The common thread running through both? A serious loss of control. The idea that Harry may not be the one driving his own narrative keeps surfacing again and again, and whether it's accurate or not, that's the version gaining serious ground in public conversations. Reports tied to life in Montecito are also being brought up more frequently, describing an atmosphere that feels tense and unsettled behind closed doors. These are claims, and they should be treated as such. But they're picking up real attention. Some say Harry is tracking every headline, every breakdown, every public discussion involving his family, and that the weight of constant scrutiny is becoming overwhelming. Talk of rising stress, restlessness, and a complete inability to disconnect from the noise. is spreading fast. Exaggerated or not, these descriptions are shaping how people read the entire situation, painting a picture of someone caught in a wave of pressure that just won't quit. And the contrast being pointed out is hard to ignore. Prince Harry has been one of the most vocal public figures when it comes to mental well-being, pushing for openness and asking people to speak up when they're struggling. That's exactly why critics keep circling back to this contradiction, questioning how those public messages about mental health line up with what's being described behind the scenes right now. It's a comparison that won't stop resurfacing, and it's landing hard. On the other side of this, Meghan is being painted in a very different light. The picture being drawn is one of strategy legal teams, formal responses, and aggressive efforts to contain the spread of these claims. But here's the twist. That very approach is now being analysed just as intensely. Some observers are arguing that the harder the pushback, the more curiosity it creates.
I wrote 4 years ago a book about Prince Charles, and it was a story about how he had rehabilitated himself after Diana's death, and how Camilla also had to be rehabilitated. And it was a number one. It was a fascinating story. So when Meghan came along into the scene, I just thought, this is fascinating. How is this going to play?
The logic spreading online is blunt. If everything is straightforward, why not just address it directly? That's speculation, not confirmed fact, but it's the kind of thinking that travels fast and keeps this whole thing burning. Meanwhile, the wider royal family's silence is being watched just as closely. No major public statements, no widely visible moments featuring Archie or Lilibet, and a clear absence of the traditional gestures people would normally expect. Stack that up against the very visible public presence of Prince William, Catherine, and their children, and the difference is impossible to miss. That contrast has sparked a fresh wave of theories. Some are suggesting the royal family's distance isn't accidental, it's a deliberate move to stay out of murky waters and avoid being pulled into the uncertainty surrounding Harry and Meghan. No confirmation exists, but this theory is gaining serious traction as things continue to unfold. At this point, the conversation has broken wide open. It's no longer a niche discussion, it's a full-scale public debate, with more voices jumping in and every single detail being placed under a magnifying glass. And one question keeps coming up louder than anything else. Will Harry and Meghan ever directly address these claims? The fact that this question is even being asked out loud shows just how far things have spiraled, and until real clarity shows up, this speculation isn't going anywhere. Critics keep hammering the same point. There were multiple moments where this could have been handled early. The argument is straightforward, clear answers, visible transparency, even basic explanations could have slowed all of this down before it reached this level. Instead, what people got were limited responses, vague details, and heavy reliance on legal pushback. That approach is now being judged harshly, and it's not landing well at all.
Can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point. And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done. So, you know, I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK, of course.
What once might have read as quiet dignity is now being interpreted in a completely different way. In today's world, silence doesn't automatically signal strength. For many watching closely, it's raising more questions than it's shutting down, and that shift in perception is pushing this whole situation even further. Harry's image is taking a very public hit. He was once celebrated as the royal who broke the mold, bold, fearless, carving out a brand new path on his own terms. But the tone has changed dramatically. Commentary is describing someone who appears overwhelmed, with pressure closing in from every direction. These are opinions and interpretations, but they're spreading fast and reshaping how the public sees him. There are also claims circulating that people from his inner circle, those who once stood firmly in his corner, are now quietly stepping back. Unconfirmed, but these reports are becoming part of the larger narrative building around him. The idea being pushed is that loyalties are shifting as the heat keeps rising. Descriptions of his current state vary, but one word keeps appearing across the board: instability. Talk of mood swings, frustration, and withdrawal is circulating widely. Exaggerated or not, these portrayals are painting a picture of real turbulence happening behind closed doors. And what makes all of this hit even harder is how central fatherhood has been to Harry's entire story. It's been framed as his anchor, his purpose, the very core of his identity. So when that part of the story gets questioned, it doesn't just challenge one detail, it reframes everything. Meanwhile, Meghan continues to be portrayed very differently. Controlled, strategic, legally aggressive, that's the image being drawn around her.
Our view, but it's not theirs. They need the money, and they need it now more than ever because they've got no other source of income. So I think they're just stuck with the devil now. They're tied to Netflix, they're tied to their book, and all the criticism they're going to take means nothing because that's the only way they can earn that.
Living a life that she's winning and she's doing all these great things, but the reality is not that. The reality is
Reports point to strong legal efforts aimed at challenging and removing certain claims. But here's the twist that keeps people buzzing. None of it seems to be working the way it was intended. Instead of cooling things down, some observers argue the legal pressure is actually making critics more convinced in their suspicions, not less. The thinking behind it is simple. Attempts to shut the conversation down are only shining a bigger spotlight on it. This is public perception, not confirmed fact, but it's playing a massive role in how this whole situation keeps evolving. Another layer adding serious heat to the discussion is the sharp contrast with past public messaging. People remember the carefully packaged documentaries, the emotional interviews, the big statements about honesty, healing, and transparency. That's exactly why the current wall of silence is hitting so differently. For many, it creates a glaring disconnect between what was said before and what's happening now, and that disconnect is driving an even bigger reaction. The gap between the open, vulnerable image that was carefully built over years and the current closed-off response is something people are finding very hard to overlook. What makes this even more striking is how specific and detailed those past public moments were. These weren't vague gestures toward openness. They were full interviews, sit-down conversations, and structured documentaries where deeply personal details were shared with the entire world. That level of access created an expectation. People felt like they knew the story. So when that same openness suddenly disappears on topics that matter just as much, if not more, it registers as a major shift, and people are noticing loudly. The feeling spreading across public conversations is that the image being presented no longer matches what's actually happening behind closed doors. Whether that perception is completely fair or not, it's gaining serious ground. More and more people are voicing the same sentiment that the carefully constructed story they were sold feels increasingly disconnected from the reality being discussed right now. And once that feeling takes hold in public opinion, it's incredibly difficult to reverse. That sentiment is spreading fast and piling even more pressure onto Harry and Meghan from every direction. And the royal family's silence? That's standing out just as much. No visible defense, no public support, no attempt to step into the conversation. The absence is loud, and people are reading into every single second of it. In situations like this, staying completely quiet can sometimes speak louder than any statement ever could. Some reports are even suggesting this distance is completely intentional, that even a small show of support could create serious complications if things develop further. Unconfirmed.
Of extraordinary reporting in your book on what this was likely based on and how it doesn't match up to what Meghan said. Here's the clip, SOT 6, from the Oprah interview.
Well, of course, that was brilliant of you to bring that clip up because the body language just showed her discomfort as she dug deeper into her own hole. I mean, the truth is this, that there are two truths. The first truth is that the conversation, I'm told and I believe, was very early on in their relationship when Harry is bowled over by Meghan, is desperately in love, and already is talking about...
But very much part of the wider conversation happening right now. Think about that for a second. The idea being floated is that the royal institution itself may be deliberately holding back, not out of indifference, but out of cold calculation. If the situation continues to grow and new information surfaces, any prior public support could become a serious liability. So the strategy, if these reports are to be believed, is to stay completely removed and let things play out without royal fingerprints on any of it. People are picking up on every bit of it. Behind the scenes, speculation is swirling that serious conversations are already taking place around incredibly sensitive topics: succession, legal complications, long-term consequences for positions within the monarchy. Nothing officially confirmed, but the fact that these questions are even being entertained shows just how high the stakes have climbed. This is no longer being treated as a passing controversy that will fade with time. The conversations reportedly happening behind closed doors suggest that key figures are taking this very seriously and thinking several steps ahead. Succession is not a small topic in royal circles. It carries centuries of tradition, expectation, and deeply embedded rules. When questions, even speculative, unconfirmed ones, start touching that territory, the entire system takes notice. And right now, those questions are very much in the air. People with knowledge of how the monarchy operates are pointing out that any uncertainty around lineage, even if never proven, creates ripples that don't disappear quickly. The institution is built on clarity, and anything that muddies that clarity becomes a problem that demands attention. At the core of everything sits one unavoidable issue: tradition. The royal system has always been built on lineage, structure, and clear expectations that stretch back generations. When uncertainty enters that world, even in the form of unproven speculation, it triggers complicated and far-reaching questions that touch every level of the institution. Could titles shift? Could positions change? Could long-held assumptions about roles within the monarchy be quietly reconsidered? Right now, there are no official answers, and that silence is leaving the door wide open for endless theories to walk right through. And those theories are not staying small. They're expanding.
For the time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK safely.
You're obviously very deeply affected by this. What memories, experiences had you hoped your children, Archie and Lilibet, would have had that you think they won't be able to now with this?
This crisis won't die down until the irrefutable truth comes out.
Connecting with other questions and building into a much larger conversation about what the monarchy stands for and how it handles challenges to its foundations. Every day that passes without clear answers is another day that gives these theories more room to grow. The institution that has survived for centuries by maintaining control of its own narrative is now watching a narrative develop that it seems unable or unwilling to address directly. The story of Harry and Meghan leaving royal life behind to build something new and authentic was one of the most talked about moves in modern royal history. It was dramatic, emotional, and captured global attention. But now, that same story is being re-examined with fresh and much more critical eyes. The cracks people keep talking about are getting harder to dismiss, and this moment is starting to feel like a genuine turning point that could redefine how this entire chapter of royal history is remembered. What's particularly striking is how quickly the public mood has shifted. Not long ago, there was significant sympathy for Harry and Meghan's position. Many people understood the pressures of royal life and respected the decision to step away. That goodwill was real, and it was strong. But goodwill has limits, and when questions start piling up without answers, even the most loyal supporters begin to waver. That wavering is exactly what's being seen right now across social media, commentary platforms, and public discussion spaces. People who once defended every decision are now asking questions they never expected to ask. People who stayed neutral are now leaning towards skepticism, and those who were already critical are becoming even more vocal. The shift is undeniable, and it's happening fast. Every passing day without a clear, direct response makes the position harder to defend and the questions harder to dismiss. The way many online voices are framing it comes down to a straight and unavoidable choice: address the speculation head-on, or keep staying silent and hope it eventually dies down. Neither path is easy, and both carry serious consequences that extend well beyond just public image. Speaking out could bring clarity and potentially shut down the speculation once and for all, but it also opens the door to intense scrutiny, follow-up questions, and a level of examination that may be deeply uncomfortable. Every word of any response would be analyzed, fact-checked.
What about the security arrangements that were in place made you feel it would be unsafe for you and your family?
There's only so much that I can say because of the redaction process and the national security matters at hand, but everything. Because in beginning of 2020, I was scored the highest as far as risk was concerned. And then overnight, I was reduced to the lowest without actually going through the risk management.
And debated in real time by millions of people. Staying quiet protects privacy in the short term, but it keeps the questions alive and breathing. And these questions, as has been made very clear, are not fading on their own. If anything, the silence is giving them more energy, not less. Every day without a response is being read as confirmation by some and as suspicious avoidance by others. There is no neutral ground left in this situation. Every choice, including the choice to say nothing, is now a statement in itself. For Harry especially, this moment feels genuinely defining in a way that goes beyond anything he has faced before. His entire journey since stepping back from royal duties has been built around powerful and consistent themes: truth, independence, authenticity, and personal growth. He positioned himself as someone who chose honesty over comfort, who was willing to speak difficult truths, even when it cost him relationships and status. That identity became the foundation of everything that followed. And now, everything being questioned cuts straight to the heart of that carefully built foundation. If the story he has told about himself, the narrative of fatherhood is his anchor, his transformation, his reason for every difficult decision is being publicly questioned, it doesn't just challenge one detail, it puts the entire framework of his public identity under the microscope. People are asking whether the version of Harry presented to the world was fully authentic, or whether key parts of it were constructed and managed just as carefully as the royal image he once walked away from. That's a brutal question, and it's being asked loudly. Think about just how much was shared with the world over the years. The interviews, the book, the documentary, layer after layer of deeply personal storytelling that invited the entire world into what was presented as a raw, unfiltered version of his life. That level of openness set a standard. It built an expectation. People felt like they had been let in behind the curtain, like they were being trusted with the real story. So when that same energy of openness goes completely dark on questions that feel just as significant, if not more, the contrast is jarring, and people aren't just noticing it. They're talking about it everywhere, loudly and without any signs of stopping. His journey has always been tied to themes of truth, independence, and personal growth.
That's why I think, I think Tina is a great journalist, and perhaps she has inside information. I don't see how the Sussexes can give up both the Netflix and the book deal. They won't be living in a Montecito cottage, be more likely living somewhere in downtown.
Everything being questioned right now forces a confrontation with some deeply uncomfortable possibilities. The man who presented himself as the one who finally told the truth is now being asked to tell it again, this time about his family and the details that matter most. And the longer that request goes unanswered, the more the public fills in the blanks on their own terms. That's a dangerous space to be in, because once people settle on a version of events, shifting that perception back becomes an uphill battle like no other. There's also the matter of timing. Every single moment that passes without clarity is a moment that someone else controls the narrative. And right now, the narrative is being shaped by speculation, analysis, and commentary from voices that have no obligation to be fair, balanced, or even accurate. The longer Harry and Meghan remain silent, the more space those voices have to operate, and the more deeply their version of events gets embedded in public consciousness. This is not a small or temporary problem. This is the kind of reputational shift that takes years to recover from, if recovery is even possible at this stage. As for Meghan, the focus stays locked on strategy and control, with every single move being interpreted in completely opposite ways depending on who's watching. Some see strength in the controlled response, a smart approach to managing a hostile media environment. Others see avoidance, a pattern of deflection that raises more questions than it answers. But either way, the attention isn't going anywhere, and the strategic approach does not appear to be cooling the situation down. What's particularly interesting about Meghan's position is just how carefully every public move seems to be calculated. Every appearance, every statement, every legal action, it all reads as deliberate and measured. But here's the thing about being that calculated in a moment like this. People start treating every move as a clue. Every action gets dissected. Every silence gets questioned. Every carefully worded statement gets pulled apart word by word to find what wasn't said. The very precision that seems designed to control the story is actually feeding the obsession with finding what's hiding underneath it. It's a cycle that seems impossible to break, and it's spinning faster by the day. What's also being discussed more openly now is the long-term impact on both of their brands and everything they've built since leaving royal life. The projects, the partnerships, the platforms, all of it exists within the context of a public image that is currently under serious pressure. Sponsors, collaborators, and business partners pay very close attention to public sentiment, and right now, public sentiment is shifting in ways that create real questions about sustainability.
Queen and the Duke.
Yes, and we just bumped into the Duke as we were walking by, which was so nice. So it'll be a nice moment to introduce the baby to more family, and my mom's with us as well. So it's been a really here we go.
Another great grand.
Waiting for the cameras, aren't you? Waiting for the cameras. Sorry. Wait.
The business of being Harry and Meghan depends heavily on public trust and relatability, two things that become much harder to maintain when large portions of the public are actively questioning the authenticity of the story being told. And let's be straight about what that actually means in practical terms. The deals, the streaming projects, the speaking engagements, the book deals, all of it is tied to a brand. And that brand is built on a very specific story, a story of courage, authenticity, and choosing truth over privilege. That story has been incredibly powerful and incredibly profitable. But brands are fragile things. They can be built over years and damaged in weeks. And right now, the damage being done to this particular brand is happening at a speed and scale that is very hard to contain. Every new wave of commentary, every viral moment of analysis, every new platform picking up the story is another chip in the foundation. The stakes are not just personal or emotional, they're practical and financial in ways that matter enormously. Every week this conversation continues and grows is another week that the foundation of everything they've built gets tested. That's a pressure that goes far beyond royal gossip or tabloid drama. It's a genuine challenge to the life and identity they've constructed outside the palace walls. And then there's the broader cultural conversation that this situation has plugged directly into. People aren't just talking about Harry and Meghan in isolation anymore. This has become part of a much wider discussion about authenticity, media management, and the gap between the Image Public Figures project and the reality that exists behind it. In a world where people are increasingly skeptical of carefully packaged narratives, this situation has become a lightning rod. It's hitting a nerve that goes beyond royal drama and touching something that resonates with people across completely different walks of life. The feeling that something isn't adding up, that the story being sold doesn't quite match the story being lived, is one that people connect with on a deeply personal level. That connection is part of what's making this conversation so difficult to contain. It's not just royal watchers and tabloid followers keeping this alive.
Why lie? It was just so truly bizarre.
Can you tell us what it's like becoming a new mum and tell us a little bit about baby Sussex, as we're calling him?
It's magic. It's pretty amazing. And I mean, I have the two best guys in the world, so I'm really happy.
Tell us a little bit about your son. What's he like? Is he sleeping well? Good baby?
Yes, he has the sweetest temperament. He's really calm.
It's regular people who have never paid close attention to royal news suddenly finding themselves drawn in, suddenly finding themselves asking the same questions, suddenly finding themselves invested in an answer. That's a much bigger and much harder audience to manage than the usual suspects, and it shows no signs of losing interest anytime soon. One question keeps echoing louder than everything else, circling back again and again across every platform, demanding an answer that simply hasn't come yet. It cuts through all the commentary, all the legal responses, all the carefully managed statements, and it sits there, unanswered and growing louder by the day. The longer it stays unanswered, the more powerful it becomes. And the more powerful it becomes, the more it shapes how everything that came before it gets reinterpreted and reassessed. That's the truly uncomfortable reality of where things stand right now. This isn't just about the present moment. It's rewriting how people see the entire journey that led here. There's a version of this story where everything gets addressed, clarity is provided, and the conversation shifts to something new. That version exists. But getting there requires a level of transparency that has not been on display, and a willingness to engage directly with questions that have been consistently avoided. Whether that willingness exists, whether that moment is even coming, nobody outside of their inner circle knows for certain. But the world is waiting, and the world is watching, and the world is very much still talking. The pressure is real. The stakes are enormous, and the eyes of the world are locked in closer than ever. Whatever happens next, whether it's a direct response, a continued silence, or something nobody has anticipated, yet it's going to define this chapter in a way that cannot be undone. This moment has that kind of weight to it, and everyone paying attention can feel it. The decisions made in the coming days, weeks, and months will echo far beyond this news cycle. They will shape how history remembers this chapter, how future generations understand this story, and how the people at the center of it are ultimately judged not just by the public, but by time itself. So now it comes down to this: what's the right move here? Address everything head on and risk the examination that comes with it, or stay silent and ride it out while the questions keep building? There's no easy answer. And that's exactly what makes this situation so gripping and so impossible to look away from. The tension between those two choices is where all of this energy lives, and until one path is clearly chosen and followed through, that tension is only going to keep growing and pulling more people into the conversation. Every person watching this story unfold has their own read on it, their own theory, their own sense of what the silence means and what the truth might be. And that's exactly what makes this so compelling. It's not just a story about famous people. It's a puzzle that millions of people are trying to solve at the same time, from every corner of the world, with every possible perspective in play. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Where do you stand on all of this? Like and share this if it made you think. Subscribe so you never miss the next deep dive. And we'll see you in the next one.